Ladies and gentlemen, Fourth and Trollers, welcome back to Fourth and Troll Fantasy, the most entertaining fantasy football podcast on the planet. My name is Noah Selby.
I'm Selby.
And I'm not really sure why I used a questioning inflection on that right there, but we are back with you for another episode. We're back with another episode of Fourth and Troll Fantasy today. It's going to be a great show. Kissing my sister prank?
Oh my
More than Troll Fantasy?
Yeah, oh my gosh. We gotta get the click somehow, folks.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. We're trying here. We got a fun show. Wes, I don't even know where we're at in the episode. We're like 30 seconds in and I've already lost it. Wes, how you doing?
I'm so irate. I could not be more mad. I hate fantasy football so much.
Yeah.
I was in a win and in scenario. Or not win and in. If I lost in my work league, I pretty much don't have a shot. And I lose by 0.5 points because of that last Jamar Chase catch in overtime on Monday night. I'm so angry. And on top of that, in our personal league, I put up a casual 178 points.
Yeah.
And lost.
Yeah.
And lost. I almost lost in the Trollers League. Because all of a sudden I played against Joe Mixon and he starts coming back and he's going to be in our hyped up segment.
Yeah.
This week was insane. There's so many people in our hyped up segment. Just for anyone that knows, we generally put in people that get 30 points or maybe 29.
There's like at least
10.
Like
11 people that got 30 points.
Big performances.
Oh.
And I think in conjunction with that, let down isn't usually super full as well. And there's like 8 or 9 people in let down. Like there were some big time performances and some dumpster fires.
Such
an
insane week of football.
Yeah.
What a way to close out the regular season. Because here we are, 1 week to go, baby. How are you? Gosh.
Yeah. No, dude, I am. I didn't have as crazy of matchups as you did this week, but I did. Had some weeks in some leagues this week where I was officially eliminated from playoff contention. Unfortunately, in our personal league, Wes, I was in a pretty wild scenario where like I needed to win this week and one certain guy needed to lose. And after Sunday Night Football, I was pretty certain that things were not going to happen because I needed Evan Ingram to outscore Trevor Lawrence by like 2 points. And I was like, yeah, I don't really see it happening. And then Trevor Lawrence gets hurt, and then Evan Ingram has his like best game of the season. And it was like,
oh yeah,
whoa, maybe I didn't end up getting the points there, which is good because the other guy I needed to lose, who had Josh Jacobs on a bye week and Josh Allen on a bye week, just happened to throw into his free flex spot there, Nico Collins. And so that guy ended up still winning. So I'm glad that it was 2 things that kept me out, not just my own team losing, but that he ended up winning as well. Trollers League, I ended up losing as well. I'm out of playoff contention there. I mean, to be honest, I call this season a win in the Trollers League because I got to 5 wins with the team that I drafted. Unbelievable stuff. Let's go. Because I don't know if you'll remember after we our first episode after the Trollers League draft, Wes and I both said, wow, we are so flattered because both of our teams are terrible.
Yeah.
And Wes, you're in a good spot in this league. I believe you're going to be up in the number 2 spot right now.
I'm going to fight for a bye week. It's up to me.
No, I mean top 2 will have a bye. So I mean, I think as of right now you have that bye and you'll be sitting there. Hopefully you have Trollers, a bye week there, and
you got to take me down if you want that hat, baby. It's up to you. Take me down.
You got to take him down. It's but listen, some fun weeks all around, some fun matchups. I unfortunately, Wes, I did defeat your girlfriend this week in fantasy. I hope there's no hard feelings. I hope
there are. She already told me.
I hope she will accept me
said, I
as
hate
a friend.
Fantasy.
Yeah,
She's like, I
Here,
got too invested and I hate it now.
I'm just
And I
okay.
was
Hang
like,
on, hang on.
yeah, and now I'm addicted.
I'm just gonna read you a text thread that I had with somebody who I'm in a league with tonight, and
Okay.
I don't think they'll mind me saying this. It was my brother. My brother texted me,
Yeah.
um, and said 145 points for the loss this week. What? And I
Yeah.
said, yeah, it's that kind of season for us, man. And his immediate text right after was, all because Tank Dell's whittled calf hurts. And to which I replied, he broke his leg, but okay. Like, I guess that's
Oh my
so. This is
gosh.
what fantasy football does to people sometimes. I've
Oh,
been there. I know I've been there for sure. I mean, when Ramondre Stevenson went down this week, I was like, oh, what? You can't tape it up?
yeah.
Come on, dude. Like, what are we doing here?
It's the
Um,
worst part of fantasy is how much we just cry over injuries. Like these are real
yeah,
people who
these
are
are
in
guys
pain
like
and
their
like need
careers are
crutches.
probably altered and stuff
Yeah.
like that, and we're like,
And we're like,
I
oh,
couldn't
I might lose
win.
$50. Gosh.
The conversation continued, and then it just went to an abrupt text of, I don't think I'm gonna play fantasy again. I don't like this rage. I said,
Yeah.
yeah, you will. I said, yeah, you will. And he said, nah. And I went, that's the best part of it, is the rage. He said, check back with me later, but I don't think I'm doing this every week. And I said, the unlucky streak will happen. And he said, maybe next year. And then he immediately then replied and went, oh, maybe I have personal growing to do to just not feel this rage. Like, it's just a game
Oh,
with nothing on the
wow.
line. Who cares? And I went, hey, +1 for the self-awareness. So, listen, that's where we're at with fantasy football this week.
M-
It was just,
Might I add one thing?
yeah, please.
-1 for the dedication. Okay. You take that rage and you go in next season even
Yeah,
better than the year before. Come
that's
on,
it.
baby.
That
Fourth
you
and
got
troll,
to
off
pull
season.
and push into it.
We got you. Come
Yeah.
on.
Listen,
Let's
we are
finish the season strong.
we have 1 week left before the fantasy football playoffs. It's crunch time. It's now or never. So
Mm.
while you're here with us at the beginning of the show, drop it in the comment, let us know. Have you clinched playoffs? What's your scenario for next week? Are you winning in? You have a long shot chance. You gotta win. One person else has to lose. Another person has to lose. Let us know. Drop it in the
You got to
comments there while you're
outscore
there.
somebody.
Yeah, like, subscribe, ring the bell. Let us know. And follow us on our socials. While you're down there on the social screen below, you'll see all our socials at Fourth and Troll and on Facebook at Fourth and Troll Fantasy. Always putting out content for you there. We got a great show, hyped up and let down, Fluker for real, waiver wire, and a Thursday night football preview that I'm considering just skipping at this point because we'll get there, I guess. Who knows? Whatever. Follow us on all our socials, like I said. And now let's jump into the news, Wes, because there's some things to talk about, some injuries to go over, and some things to get at before we jump into the show.
Good chunk of news actually for this final week heading into our last regular season for fantasy football. Grab a cup of Joe. Let's go through the news here. Hey, speaking of last week, it's the last week of bye weeks in the NFL. If you have any Arizona Cardinals or Washington Commanders players on your team, make sure you plan accordingly for that final stretch. Ooh, I guess for the Sam Howell truthers, that's going to be a little bit of a challenge. But anyway, Monday Night Football. Jacksonville Jaguars quarterback Trevor Lawrence was stepped on by one of his offensive linemen and was in immediate pain. For those that watched, he tried to stand up, fell back, and threw his helmet in complete rage. He was helped off the field. It's now been declared to be an ankle sprain. He's likely going to miss time. CJ Beathard finished the game and would presumably be the starter. Noah, I want to just ask your quick thoughts on this because this is someone that, as we have now learned, has a late season surge. Last year, first half, not so great. Second half was amazing. It was looking that way now. But what we learned Monday night are certain players are going to be impacted greatly by this. What is your first reaction to Trevor Lawrence's injury and how that affects the rest of the Jacksonville offense?
Yeah, obviously losing Trevor Lawrence is a big downside to your fantasy season. I know a lot of managers who had been patient, people who picked him up that were hopeful. We're definitely enjoying the experience they were having, even on Monday night. He still had a fantastic night on Monday night for
Yeah.
fantasy football. could have been even better, but unfortunately he goes out with the injury. Um, I know it's not a big name, but CJ Beathard's not bad. Like CJ Beathard, we've seen him in the 49ers system before. He played. I didn't know I've seen him start like 4 or 5 games, and he's fine. Like he's a fine quarterback. He's not Trevor Lawrence, but I mean, you saw like he didn't like the Jaguars' offense just didn't like completely stall once he came into the game. Like stood with the football a little bit, still got in the scoring position, stuff like that. And so I don't know if I don't know if this is necessarily a huge like loss for the skill players. I know for Trevor Lawrence owners it is. But I mean, I'm it may just be that it's a tight end, but like I still feel fine about Evan Ingram. I think I still feel fine about Travis Etienne. And I saw a couple of deep shots to Calvin Ridley from CJ Beathard. So you can't expect exactly what you were getting with Trevor Lawrence, but I think all these guys are probably still fine to keep playing.
I think Evan Ingram, if anything, I think everyone else has maybe a lateral move. Calvin Ridley may take a dip because he was on a hot streak for a couple of games.
Sure.
But Evan Ingram had a heck of a night on Monday, and it
Yeah.
seemed like he was the most reliable option for CJ Beathard. Maybe we'll see some more options with Zay Jones, and maybe when Christian Kirk is healthy from his groin injury that he also suffered, maybe he might be involved a little bit more. But it does feel like it's going to be okay, right? It feels like Jacksonville players aren't going to lose you your playoffs because it's Beathard instead of Lawrence.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think if you had Calvin Ridley, you had already kind of had a replacement and you had kind of started to feel better about rolling Ridley out. So if you feel better going back to that replacement for Calvin Ridley, then you do continuing to roll him out. I don't know what the rest of their schedule looks like, but I I'm sure they're gonna be. I feel like they can be competitive still. I know their defense can put them in good positions, even though it wasn't a great showing on prime time. But their defense is still a very talented defense. So I mean, I think yeah, if you have Ridley, you probably already had somebody you were rolling out over him. If you want to go back to them, that's fine. Evan Ingram, I think, is still a great play. We've seen Evan Ingram be semi-successful before with probably worse quarterbacks. And Travis Etienne, I think, is definitely just still going to keep up. I think he probably gets maybe a little bit of a bump up. I think they probably rely on him a little bit more. Maybe they try to run the ball more. So, um, yeah, I think everything is going to be fine. Yeah, I think we'll be okay here with the Jaguars.
The Jaguars' rest of the fantasy season is at Cleveland versus Baltimore, at Tampa Bay, and then the last week is versus Carolina. So
That's
it's
championship week.
doable. That's championship week.
Oh man,
It's doable, but
that's
it's
rough
not
actually.
easy.
That's tough. I mean, the Browns have been without Denzel Ward for a couple games.
Miles
Kyron
Garrett,
Williams
okay?
just had a pretty. Miles Garrett's okay. Travis Etienne just
Okay.
had sorry, Kyron Williams just had a pretty solid game, saved by like a late game touchdown a little bit. No, I think yeah, I think Evan Ingram is going to be fine. I think Calvin Ridley, you can roll him out if you want. You can replace him if you want. It's just maybe a matchup dependent thing. And Etienne, I think, is still okay. So ultimately, overall, I do think we're okay here.
Fantastic. Let's hope so, because this is quite a time to have Trevor Lawrence go out
Yeah.
for a long time. Could be the year. We don't know yet. Jonathan Taylor will be out. Back to the news. Jonathan Taylor will be out 3 to 5 weeks due to this thumb surgery. Very likely being out for the rest of this fantasy season. At best, he's there in the championship round if you happen to make it. What a blow. And so sudden. Nothing even happened. It just felt like he was like, oh, actually, I don't have a thumb anymore. And then surgery.
Yeah.
Speaking of running backs that are hurt, as you see the title of this episode, we are going through some bad injuries. Ramondre Stevenson was hurt very early on their Sunday snooze fest against the Chargers with an ankle injury, and he was ruled out after the game. They determined it is also a sprained ankle like Trevor Lawrence's. He is expected to miss multiple weeks. As we quickly saw, Ezekiel Elliott is the backup. I'm sure Noah and I will be talking about him later on in our waiver wire segment. Derek Carr left with a shoulder injury, a back injury, and a concussion. And somehow He still might play this week. Apparently, Dennis Allen was like, "Yeah, his shoulder's fine." Okay, I don't know how Derek Carr continues to get through all of these. I think he's like that scene in Monty Python: The Holy Grail when they fight the Black Knight and they've like cut
Yeah.
off all his limbs, and he's like, "All right, we'll call it a draw." Like he just keeps playing football. It's ridiculous. Speaking of quarterbacks, hey, the Jets made a quarterback change and replaced Tim Boyle with Trevor Siemian, but they haven't made an official announcement on who the upcoming quarterback is for this week. This is only relevant, I guess, to Garrett Wilson owners that have no other options, like myself in
This
one
is
league.
hilarious.
Anyway, it's so
This is
funny.
so
I
funny.
feel
I love that all of us
so
were
bad for
like,
them.
come on, bench Zach. Come on, you got to give somebody else a shot. And now we're like, hey, Zach might have been okay. I don't know. We might have
From a fantasy
overestimated this.
perspective,
Yeah.
I think I would rather have Zach Wilson, but the
Yeah.
team is toast. Anyway, as you mentioned earlier in the show, per your brother, he's our source. Tank Dell suffered a boo-boo on his leg, which
A
is in
little
fact a
calf injury.
fractured tibia. Yeah, he broke his leg on Sunday. He's going to be on IR. Obviously, he's going to be out for the season because he had surgery. In addition to that, just being a broken, fractured tibia. His fantasy season is done. Thank you for your service, Tank Dell. You are fantastic. We look forward to drafting you next year. Speaking of fantastic rookie wide receivers, Puka Nacua got banged up multiple times on Sunday, came back in a lot, but in the end, he did suffer an AC sprain. He's not expected to miss much time, if any, but it's still obviously worth monitoring, especially
Yeah.
after a big return, big points.
Did you see the
We'll talk
did you
about him.
see his quote after the game?
No, what'd he say?
Dude, I want to give a shout out because Sean McVay gave some great sound bites and quotes this weekend. Made a joke about Kyron being on his fantasy team. That's why they went for the touchdown late. He immediately was like, I'm kidding. Like, I'm joking. This is a joke. But then at one point, Sean McVay's like, yeah, I thought Puka died. I thought he was dead on the sideline. And then you get this quote from Puka, and I'm not kidding. Puka was like, yeah, I couldn't breathe and I thought my shoulder was out of place. But I was all good. And it was just like,
I was
what?
all good.
Yeah,
Oh my
I was all good.
gosh.
I could not believe to see him come out in the second half. It was hilarious. Some great sound bites coming out of LA this weekend.
Puka Nacua and Derek Carr have the same doctor. They have the
Yeah.
same physician that let him go back and play. Anyway, last couple here. Thanks for sticking around. We're going to get through the whole week pretty soon. Amari Cooper is still in concussion protocol. His status is in question. Obviously, he's been a great factor for this Browns offense, even with Joe Flacco, so just keep that in mind. Kenny Pickett suffered an ankle injury and he had to have surgery as a result. Because of it, he's expected to miss 2 to 4 weeks. The Steelers are playing this Thursday, so they have already announced that Mitch Trubisky will be the starter for the foreseeable future. Quarterbacks, remember Tyrod Taylor? You better, because he's been designated off of IR and he could be back this week as a Giant starter. Nothing is certain, but Tyler's presence could obviously be an upgrade for anyone that is, I guess, playing Giants players. Maybe Saquon Barkley, maybe Darren Waller returns. We'll just see what happens with Tyrod Taylor. Derrick Henry is not in concussion protocol. We found this out. Apparently, he was going to be, but he is no longer. Mike Vrabel confirmed this. He should still be good to go on Sunday against the Miami Dolphins. Christian Watson, after having a fantastic Sunday night performance against the Chiefs, suffered a hamstring injury. He is in question for this week. Last piece of news here, as we mentioned earlier, Christian Kirk sustained a groin injury on the Jaguars' very first drive of Monday Night Football. He will be questionable for the final week of the regular season. That's it for the news. Let's get hyped up and let down. And I hope you got some water, Noah, because there is a lot we have to talk about. Stay hydrated, stay quenched. Let's get going, baby.
Many things to discuss here. A lot of people got us hyped up, especially here. Let me just wear my eyes. Yeah, Brock Purdy with a 38-point fantasy day. And another guy who helped him out a whole lot there was Deebo Samuel with 35.8 fantasy points. These guys lit it up. Deebo Samuel scored like 36 fantasy points on like 7 opportunities. Like it was like, dude, it felt like every time I watched the guy get the ball, he was scoring touchdowns. He was unbelievable. What a game for him. And they just trounced Philly. That was crazy stuff. What a game.
Yeah,
We all thought that would be
shocking.
like game of the year potentially. And it was just like, well, Philly scored another touchdown, and sorry, San Francisco scored another touchdown, and Philly didn't. So that's fun. Uh, Moving on here, Nico Collins, 34 fantasy points. Tank Dell goes out. Nico Collins takes back over as the guy we saw him be earlier in the season. Nico Collins, potentially a league winner if you've got him in leagues. And also keep an eye on Noah Brown. I'm expecting him to see a lot more targets going forward.
Yeah.
Had a goose egg this week for Noah Brown, but he was still out there for like over 80% of snaps. So don't be scared. Noah Brown will definitely be rolled out for sure. Tyreek Hill continues to do Tyreek Hill things, is on pace to break that single season receiving yardage record. 32.5 fantasy points for Tyreek. He had 30.8 points at halftime. We tweeted out on X at one point. Tyreek Hill has 28 fantasy points today. He's touched the ball 4 times. Neat.
Ridiculous.
That's the kind of guy you get with Tyreek Hill. That duo there is pretty insane. Jamar Chase on Monday night. What a night he had there. 31.6 fantasy points, 12 targets, 11 catches for 149 and a touchdown. We talked about it back when Joe Burrow got hurt. You know, he's probably the one guy you still just keep rolling out because he's Jamar Chase. You know, you look at Devontae Adams with Aiden O'Connell. You still roll out Devontae Adams. You keep rolling out Jamar Chase. Unfortunately, Wes, I did not do that. We talked about it on a Sunday morning, and I was like,
"Oh, we texted.
Dude, I don't know. I'm pretty nervous here. I don't know. I think Deontay can get like a similar output. It just didn't look very good the first week with Browning. And Deontay scores like 14 points, and I'm like, yeah, okay, like he'll probably be around there. And then Jamar drops a 30 bomb. Good thing, and more for my own conscience, is that I still wouldn't have won even if I had played Chase. But either way, Jamar had a great night.
I'll add one thing. One catch, 73-yard touchdown. So he had a great PPR
like
night.
14 point play, like half the points come off one play, but still,
not to discredit
targets.
What happened, but this is by far his best season or best game for the rest of the season
for the
with Jake
remaining
Browning.
year. Yeah. But still, you love to see 12 targets. Granted, overtime game, but still, love to see the 12 targets there. Always good stuff there. Jordan Love. I mean, this guy is on a hot streak. I mean, he started the year on a bit of a hot streak, had a little bit of a low, little swoop down there. But my goodness, he is up and he is moving. 30 fantasy points for him this week. Mike Evans, 29.2 fantasy points, and most importantly, a 10th straight season of over 1,000 receiving yards for Mike Evans. And Wes, I don't know. I mean, he had 3 seasons with Brady, and the first 2 were incredible. Dude, this might be the best I've ever seen him play. And he's 30. It's his 30-year-old season. And like he's looking better than I've seen in a long time. Than like maybe early on days.
Not ever.
Like I think he's looking better now than he did with Brady whatsoever. Baker Mayfield better than Tom Brady, confirmed. What? I mean, what? What's going on
wrong?
Here? He's just I don't know what this is, dude, but he looks so good. He looks awesome, and what a steal. What a draft day steal for fantasy football, man. Everybody was staying away from him. And gosh, he's just been awesome. Sam Laporta, he's back. And he's better than ever. 29 fantasy points, 9 for 9 for 140 and a touchdown for Laporta. I heard some people talking about this on Monday, Wes, and I wanted to ask your opinion.
Okay.
Is this like the best rookie tight end season that we may have ever seen?
It's
at
about
least
to
maybe
be.
For fantasy football. I think already I'm ready to say this is, I mean, for sure for fantasy football, this is better than Kyle Pitts' rookie year. I know Kyle Pitts had over 1,000 yards. But like
we go back to Evan Ingram on the Giants. Evan Ingram had 1,000 yards, and that's the one that people remember. But actually, during that game, they threw up a graphic that showed some, I can't remember which team it was, but some old tight end, and he has as many. It's like the greatest tight end rookie season of all time, and Sam Laporta is on pace to beat that. And Laporta could statistically and historically have the greatest rookie tight end season of all time. And I'm so glad that you and I had our eye on him in the offseason, and we pointed
Yeah.
out like, hey, this guy might be something good. So just as a, pat on our own backs, like, we talked about it's a risky start. Maybe you throw him in for, the very first game of the season because he could be for real. And he is, I mean, we don't have to answer this now. We'll answer this next season.
Yeah.
But I mean, you're going to be drafting Sam Laporta or Travis Kelce. I mean, this is the kind
Yeah.
of question of his impact. And we'll talk about Travis Kelce in a moment here, too, because Laporta is balling out, man. He's
Laporte is balling
incredible.
out. He's been so awesome. It's been great to see. Last couple here, a couple of Bengals that just has hyped up. Joe Mixon, great game for him. What we expected whenever we first saw Burrow go down was to lean on Joe Mixon here. Didn't get that in the first game back without Burrow, but now we just saw a 30-point game from Joe Mixon. Two rushing touchdowns, 7 targets,
Ridiculous.
6 catches for 49. He's just absolutely awesome there. Joe Mixon's going to come on late in this season and be completely awesome. And then Jake Browning, 28 fantasy points this week, 354 passing yards and a touchdown. He has 22 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown as well. Dude's freaking awesome. Like what? Like this Bengals team might be able to make a little push here. I know their schedule's a little tough going down the stretch here, but dude, like they might be okay. I mean, they took down the Jaguars. I know the Jaguars lost Trevor Lawrence, but like Jags are
I mean,
legit, and they beat him.
last thing, and then we'll go to our letdown segment. But Browning looked clutch, and 32 of 37 is insane. That is like
Yeah,
prime Peyton Manning kind of passer rating. That is phenomenal. And
yeah,
on top of that, Steelers just lost their quarterback. Browns are relying on Joe Flacco, albeit, they're doing what they can with Flacco. But I mean, the Bengals have a shot. They've already beat the Bills.
yeah,
So they're ahead of them in this wild card race. I mean, the Bengals are going to try. They're going to try, and this is great
yeah.
news for Jamar Chase owners, Mixon owners especially. I don't think you need to go and we'll talk about Jake Browning and Fluker for real, but I mean
Yeah.
that was impressive,
Yeah,
by him.
we'll break it down for sure. Let's get let down a little bit because there are some big names that just had
Okay,
bummer performances. Patrick Mahomes yet again just continues to disappoint. It's so disappointing to have Mahomes in fantasy this season. I was one season early on my doubt of Mahomes. Going into last season, I had him
yep,
as the QB8. He is currently the QB8. Somehow, even though it feels like he's been terrible pretty much all season except for a couple games. But he is the QB8, 15 fantasy points. Like it's wasn't a great performance. It is they don't have big plays. They're scoring nearly a touchdown less per game this season than they were last season. They aren't. I mean, this is just disappointing. It's disappointing to be a Patrick
yep.
Mahomes owner. That is for sure. It's a big letdown. Amon-Ra St. Brown has like a pedestrian game for him. He still scores like 13 points. He still gets into the double digits for yet the 12th consecutive week this season. He has never scored single digits so far this year. He's been awesome, but 12.9 points, and like they scored like 3 touchdowns in like 7 minutes on Sunday. Like the first 7 minutes of the game, they were up
Yeah.
21-0. And I was going up against Amon-Ra St. Brown, and I was like, well, I'm done for. This is cool. Like I'm already like this is going to be just absolutely terrible. He scores their second touchdown or third touchdown in the game. I'm not sure. I don't remember which one, but he was balling and then he stopped. 6 targets is like I think probably his lowest on the season. So it's pretty disappointing stuff there, but you're just let down by that as well. Raheem Mostert, 12.1 fantasy points. Hey, he gets in the end zone, but it was the Devon Achane show. They were up big. They didn't need, they want to keep Mostert healthy. They didn't need to keep running him. They just got Achane back. Achane gets like 20 something touches on the game. It was just the Dolphins were up big and
It's
Achane
funny
took
to
over.
see Raheem Mostert in our letdown segment and Tua not in our hyped up segment, even though they still put up 42
Yeah,
points,
45.
and you
Yeah,
wonder
it's
like,
42
or
to
45
15.
points. It's like how did that happen? Well, the Dolphins got one defensive touchdown, and then they were up so big they just benched all their starters, and then Devon
Yeah.
Achane still scores. Like Mike
Yeah.
White led that offense down the field for another touchdown. So
Yeah.
disappointing for fantasy though.
Disappointing stuff for sure. George Kittle let down. This is part of the roller coaster ride with Kittle. You have the highs, you get the lows, and this is one of the lows. He should be fine. You can keep rolling him out just for the potential for sure. Keenan Allen. Oh my gosh, this game was so bad. This game was so bad. It was so bad. It was for
I hated
just to
watching
go
it.
into the like the Vegas odds for stuff. The Chargers were, I believe, 6.5 point favorites. So the spread for the Patriots was plus 6.5. For those who have never like done any sports betting or gambling, that means that if you were to bet on the Patriots to cover, you would take the final score, you would add 6.5 points to the Patriots score, and then that means they would cover the spread. The Patriots cover the spread and they scored 0 points. This game sucked. This was one of the worst games of the season, and it might be the worst game of the season. Have the Jets and Falcons not played on Sunday? This is like it was, dude. What a freaking terrible game. Keenan still scores 10.8, but it's like he had been on such a high kick for the entire season, especially lately. So you're disappointed there for sure. And then his quarterback Justin Herbert, such a bad game, dude. I know. I mean, I don't want to be the one who continues to be like, get Herbert help. Like they keep dropping the ball, but like there were some bad drops in this game. I'll be frank about that. Like Austin Eckler does not look like himself. Even Keenan Allen dropped the
No.
ball. Eckler's been dropping balls for like the past 4 weeks. Like I don't know what's going on with him. He has been so
And
bad.
I'd rather have any other rookie wide receiver than Quentin Johnston, it feels
Yeah,
like at
I
this
dude,
point.
can you believe it? Can you believe can you believe that Puka Nacua went in the 5th round and Quentin Johnson was the first wide receiver taken? Like what are we doing here? This is so bad. It's so bad.
Yeah. Well,
Uh
he's like second
uh,
though. JSN went first, but it was like
oh, you're right.
Chargers. He was
JSN
like
did go
top
first.
3
Yeah,
wide
yeah.
receiver taken.
Yeah, he went in that run there on the
Still.
4 wide receivers. There's always an odd man out. There you go. Jahmyr Gibbs, such a good start to the game. Again, just like Amon-Ra St. Brown, but had such a down game. 6.4 fantasy points. 8 for 60 on the ground. It's like, oh, dude's killing it. And then it was like, oh,
Yeah.
what happened? Like what happened there? And so he just wasn't involved, I guess. I'm not sure. It didn't feel like he was going to have that bad of a game watching that game, but he ended up having a real poor game. And then DeAndre Swift, 4 fantasy points, just 13 rushing yards. Not the Falcons. The Eagles were just not in a position to be able to run the football. But 49ers defense was great, and they were just down so much. So not a good game for DeAndre Swift. That is it for hyped up and let down. And now let's break down some of these performances, Wes and Fluker, for real, because some stuff we got to talk about here. Starting out with Puka Nacua, who happened to score 23.9 fantasy points. If only somebody like let us know that was going to happen, dude, because he was my dud. And then, oh, wait. Dude, roll the tape back. Roll the tape. What? Cut to freaking Friday when I was like, yeah, Puka's unfortunately a dud. Brown's defense is good. He's been just bad this week. You got to roll him out. I'm not excited about it, though. And you're like, mark my words. And I was like, what? And you were like, he's going to score 23 fantasy points on Sunday. And I was like, oh, I'll roll him out then. And dude, I went to go like FaceTime you last night because I had like the epiphany at like 11:30 p.m. And I was like, oh my God. He scored 23 fantasy points. And it's like, it's the fact that you just like nailed it right on the head. Cause like Puka had like a 45-yard run that got called back on a hold. So it's like, you could have been wrong. But no, you just nailed it on the head. Like it was just absurd. I mean, just like right there, 23 fantasy points.
Subscribe to Fourth and Troll Fantasy.
One more receiving yard, and you were wrong, Wes. But 23 points, and you nail it. You got a 9-yard buffer.
Never been wrong.
Crushed it. That is hilarious, dude. I cannot believe it. I mean, I rolled them out, and I was happy. I hope you guys rolled them out, and you were happy there. This seems for real. I mean, Cooper Cup kind of saved his fantasy day because he scores a touchdown, but it really does seem like Puka is the most reliable, locked in Rams wide receiver here, and the Rams are fighting for a playoff spot. So, like you said last week, Wes, your favorite fantasy players to have at the end of the season are the teams that are fighting for a playoff spot, that need to be balling out and
Right.
doing well. And the Rams have some competitive matchups coming up. So with Puka, this feels for real. 7 for 105, and what would have been like 3 carries for 80 rushing yards. He and on a good running defense too. Um, he
Right.
gets the 2 for 34, but this feels for real in my opinion. What about his quarterback though? Because Matthew Stafford had a few good weeks here. Definitely a good week against Arizona, and then he comes out here, 28.96 fantasy points here, back-to-back weeks of 3+ passing touchdowns. Wes, I mean, is Stafford reliable? Can we keep rolling him out?
If I've got Trevor Lawrence, I'm going to get Matthew Stafford right away.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, I think that is. Yeah, yes, I agreed. Astute analysis here on Fourth and Troll Fantasy. I just lost all my
Oh
words,
yeah.
dude. I don't even know where I was going.
But yeah, I think you can get 25. I think you can expect 25 points, an average of 25 points for
Yeah,
Stafford in these last 4 weeks.
I think you have to, because I do think I'm going to check their schedule right now just to confirm, because I do believe they have a quite a competitive schedule coming up. So they have Baltimore, who they're going to have to keep, they're going to have to score against. It's a tough defense, but you're going to need Puka to show up. You're going to need Stafford to show up. So there's that. You got Washington, who is the worst secondary in the NFL. So you're
Oh,
liking
they're going
that
to
a
get
lot.
85 points against them.
Yeah, you got New Orleans, who just had 21 points scored on them in 7 minutes to start that game. So you got that going for you there. And then fantasy
Right.
championship ends with the Giants. So you like that matchup there. You like that matchup actually for
Yeah.
Kyron Williams as well, for Puka Nacua. So Rams skill players,
Wow.
keep rolling them out, especially even Cooper Cup. You got to keep going with him. He can score the touchdown. He can get you, into that wide receiver 2 range. So it's definitely worth still rolling them out there. Jordan Love. I might be talking about Jordan Love a little bit later in this show. But I'm just going to say I think this is for real. That's where I'll rest my case at for now.
That's fair. You're going to have more of a dedicated time to talk about him later in this episode. But excuse me. I mean, this is something that we said was for real last time that he was on this segment, because I said that 30 plus points was not for real, but I think you could depend on him as a fantasy player. But here he is again with 29 points. And again, this is our 6-point passing fantasy scoring system that we're looking at. So
Right.
it's not the same for some other people, but yeah, it's for real. And he usually actually gets more rushing yards than this. So
Yeah.
he actually kind of uses his legs a little more often. 2 rushes for 10 yards is not common, but when you're wheeling and dealing like you are in the air, I mean, I guess you're going to put up 3 touchdowns and you're going to get 29 fantasy points. So yeah, for real.
Yeah, I know they were kind of cramming the comparisons to Rodgers and Brett Favre down our throat, but like, dude, that pass to Romeo Dobbs, that might have been the throw of the year. Like, in the
Oh,
pocket, about to get drilled. That was just insane. Like, I don't know what more to say, but that was
there's
that was
something
an
there.
unbelievable throw. He's showing the pieces. One of our social media editors, Noah, is he's a big Packers fan, and
Oh yeah.
we texted him after that game last Sunday night, and he was quite excited. He was excited about that game. So good
Yes,
things to
yes, he
come for the
was.
Packers. It feels like Jake Browning here, 28.6 fantasy points. We mentioned him already. For me, I think this was potentially the best game of the season. So I'm not really sure, but what do you think, Wes? What are your thoughts?
I I don't even look at this as a Jake Browning fantasy stat. It's like, is Jake Browning fluke or for real to start? I'm almost looking at this as they've got an interpretation as, this gives me confidence to keep rolling out Jamar Chase and Joe Mixon. And if I'm in a desperate play, maybe T Higgins. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
I don't know about T Higgins, but
Yeah.
I see Jake Browning as legitimate for the Bengals for the rest of the season, especially in this wild card race, because they're tied with a lot of teams, and I feel good about the Bengals for fantasy going forward. So in that regard, for real, but I'm not starting Jake Browning.
Yeah. Me either. No, that's for sure. There you go. Evan Ingram, we already talked about him a little bit, but 23 fantasy points. Another situation where I think maybe this could be his best game of the season, but the usage is completely there, especially going forward when Trevor Lawrence returns, and with CJ Beathard going forward as well. I mean, this was Evan Ingram's first touchdown of the season. Like, he was in a drought. Like, the touchdowns had to
Yeah,
come at some point, and they finally arrived on Monday Night Football in Week 13. So, hey, he did this toward the end of the year last year too. He had a similar thing as Trevor going on, where like
that's right.
he was a candidate for fantasy football playoffs MVP last year because his performance in Week 15 in the first round of the playoffs for fantasy won people weeks single handedly. So stay tuned, man. I think Evan Ingram is. I mean, I think in the tight end landscape, you were always playing Evan Ingram, but I think we could see more 20+ point games than not going down the stretch.
I buy it. I buy it.
I think so too. You know who I don't buy, Wes, in this
Tell
Fluker for
me,
Real segment is James Conner. This is a fluke. You know why this is a fluke?
enlighten
Because
me.
the Cardinals were winning. When the Cardinals are losing games, they're not force feeding the ball to James Conner for 25 carries, 105 yards, and 2 touchdowns. That's the reality of it. I think it's worth noting he did nothing in the receiving game. I think it's worth noting that Michael Carter, the guy that we were excited that the Cardinals claimed, is carving out
Yeah,
a role for himself in this offense. That's exciting stuff to see. And the Cardinals aren't going to be winning games like this down the stretch. They're on a bye week next week, and then in the first round of the fantasy playoffs, they play the 49ers. You're rolling out James Conner against the Niners in the first round of the playoffs? I'm not. If I can help it, if I'm in a situation where I have to, sure, but like I'm not buying this. He scored less than 10 points. This is his best game of the season. He scored less than 10 points each of the first 2 games he's been back. I don't buy it. This is a fluke.
I have nothing to add. You make the case, and the numbers look nice. We see 25 carries for 105 yards, but you know who has almost an identical stat line? The next
Who's
running
that,
back
Wes?
on our Fluker for Real
Yeah,
segment,
it's Chuba
Chuba
Hubbard,
Hubbard.
and unfortunately, this is kind of the other way around for me. I kind of do buy this one because it's this first game. It's like a Pat Fryermuth situation. I feel like where it's his first game under a new regime. We were wondering how the backfield was going to pan out, and dude, Miles Sanders was like non-existent. Like it was like the carry count
Yeah,
was like 25-8 for Miles Sanders. Like, it's Chuba Hubbard going forward for the rest of the season. So if you can, like, if he's out there on waivers, go grab him. If he's available, go grab him. If you need him, he's a fine flex play. I think he's going to be involved for sure. So
yeah. I thought
his
it was going to be a
game has been
dud.
PPR. Yeah, I mean, I did too against his Bucks defense, but I guess when you carry the ball 25 times, I guess you can find the end zone on, you know, less than 10% of those carries. I don't know, dude. It was strange to see this stat line, especially. It was a close game. So, I mean, I figured,
It's a good game.
yeah, it was a good game to watch. So we'll see what happens here. Joe Flacco with 20 fantasy points here, 254 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. If you're desperate, maybe, but like, probably not. I I don't know.
No,
Why are we talking about Joe
no.
Flacco in the year of 2023? Like, what's happening?
Yeah, it was so funny because someone talked about it. They were like, "Wow, and here is Joe Flacco, former Super Bowl MVP from 11 years ago." It's like,
Yeah.
wow, it's been a while, huh?
It's been that
Sheesh.
long. Yeah, it's been that long. And it feels so ridiculous to be talking about it, but here we are. Alec Pierce, a guy that I don't remember if we mentioned on the show recently. I feel like it was, but like or I don't know if it was just a personal text between the two of us, Wes, but like we talked about Alec Pierce. and how he's out there for like 95% of the snaps every single week. And you wouldn't even have known if he caught a ball all year. Like you don't
Right.
hear his name. But on Sunday, he goes 6 targets, 3 catches for 100 yards and a touchdown, his first 100-yard game of his career. I mean, I think I set it up a little bit too easily, but this is a fluke, right? I mean,
Yes, it is. Now, in respect to the Colts fan base, Alec Pierce is pretty cool. He's a good player. He's a good
yeah,
wide receiver. An important piece, veteran. You get the point. He's not fantasy relevant though. Sorry.
yeah. No, he's not. This next guy has been for a long time, but we got to talk about him a little bit. DeAndre Hopkins with 18.9 fantasy points. You love to see the 12 targets, but 5 for 75 and a touchdown. He has a carry for 4 yards. You're
Yeah.
Derrick Henry. What are you doing handing the ball off to whatever? I question everything with Mike Vrabel. I'm tempted to say for real because it's like the second game we've seen him have 10 plus with targets with Will Levis, but when you only catch 5 of those 12 targets, I don't know how quality those targets are.
That's what I was going to mention. You can't, if someone is targeting DeAndre Hopkins 12 times, and he's only coming down with 5 catches, there's only 2 scenarios. One, DeAndre Hopkins is dropping 7 balls, or 2, you have 7 inaccurate passes to DeAndre Hopkins. What's more likely?
Well, I'll tell you what's more likely because we saw it. Dude, where does Will Levis get off? Did you see this on Sunday? Did you see this, dude?
Yeah, you texted me about it.
Will Levis hits DeAndre Hopkins on like a go route and throws the ball 7 yards out of bounds. And DeAndre Hopkins like kind of turns around and is like, I don't know. And then they cut shot to Will Levis and he's like, what are you doing? You turn around. What? Who do you think you're a second round bust rookie? Like you whining and screaming at DeAndre Hopkins? What are we doing here? Like what? I was like, who do you think you are? Even the announcers were like, does he know who he's talking to right now? Like what, dude? Oh. This was so no, dude. I mean, I like the 12 targets, but like turn around. I'm like, what are you doing, Will? Like, what are we doing here? This is ridiculous. I could not believe like this was like, huh? Like, what world are we living in where Will Levis is like pulling a Derek Carr and Aaron Rodgers, getting frustrated that his receiver did the wrong thing? Dude, how are you not 9'6" and you couldn't catch that ball out of bounds?
Right.
What a joke,
fluke.
dude.
Fluke for DeAndre Hopkins because of Will Levis.
Yeah, what a joker, man. Harrison Bryant, 15.9. Fluke? I mean, he scores a touchdown. I mean,
him.
Harrison Bryant, everyone's favorite fantasy tight end.
Right.
Fluke.
Some people are like, isn't that the Chiefs kicker?
Yeah. Last one here, Demarcus Robinson, 15.5 fantasy points. Fluke. I mean, it's if you can't rely on Cooper Kupp all that often, you can't rely on Demarcus Robinson. So I guess that's where you land on that one. Got him. Bars. The bad side here of Fluke for real, we're gonna fly through this one because it feels so easy with some of these guys. One that's not so easy that we'll just talk about for a second here is Travis Kelce, 12.1 fantasy points, 5 targets, 4 catches for 81 yards. It may not seem easy, but Wes, we talked about it, and it might actually be easy. Defenses are blanketing this guy, like you said. Defenses are blanketing this guy. We see Rashee Rice get to be the beneficiary of that. A second game in a row. Rashee Rice with 19 targets over his last 2 games. And Travis Kelce gets 5 targets on Sunday night. I mean, it is Travis Kelce. You keep rolling him out, but this is This is for
ever
real
since that Dolphins game.
Because this is for real because this isn't what you sign up for when you drafted Kelce in the first round. So
Yeah.
I guess that's where you land on that. I'm not really sure.
Some people may have been saved because of that bone bruise heading into week 1. Some people got saved from this late season because Travis Kelce might
Yeah,
be
they got
losing
nervous.
you
Yeah,
your playoffs. Because people panic. They're like, oh, he's got that bone bruise heading
yeah,
into Thursday night against the Lions. I'm going to skip him because I can't trust him. And you might be in better shape because of it.
yeah. Might be in a better spot. Austin Eckler, we already talked about him. 4.7 points. Third straight game with less than 9 fantasy points. For real, I don't know what happened. Out of nowhere, he fell off a cliff. He came back from his
Yeah,
injury. He
bad.
had like 2 or 3 weeks of 20 plus points. He was back. We were feeling good, and out of nowhere, he fell off a cliff. I don't know what happened to Austin Eckler.
We
I
saw him
don't
in
know if he's
person
hurt
week
and they're
1.
not reporting it. Yeah, I don't know if he's hurt and they're not reporting it or what. I almost think that has to be the scenario. Because like I don't know how you just fall off a cliff like this. He had what is it? 14 He had 17 opportunities. He scored he
Yeah.
scored less than 5 fantasy points. He scored 1.8 more fantasy points than Ramondre Stevenson. And
He got
Ramondre
hurt
Stevenson got hurt
like
on
in
the
this.
second drive of the game.
Yeah. And the worst part
This
is
is so bad.
it's not even like then someone else had a great game and it was just they went with a
Right.
hot hand. Nothing. Nothing.
Yeah.
And this is what I was mentioning is that we saw him in person week 1. We were at SoFi Stadium to watch the Dolphins play the Chargers, and he looked fantastic. So did Joshua Kelly. I mean, it was a shootout. It was a 30-plus point game from both Dolphins and Chargers. It was awesome. And like he
Right.
got hurt right after that. And then, as you said, he had a couple good games, but that's been it. And you're not going to not start Austin Eckler, but this is your season now. You are
Yeah.
going to die by the hands of Austin Eckler, it feels like.
Yeah. It's disappointing. Kyler Murray, 13.8 fantasy points. I'm willing to go to bat for this one. I think this is a fluke. I think this is a scenario where they were winning and it was like, let's keep the ball as long as possible. Let's hand James Conner the football. Kyler Murray's returned from injury, and besides this game, he's gone over 20 fantasy points in his first 2. I think he's only been back 3 games, if I'm correct here. But his rushing upside is very good. He scored rushing touchdowns in every game besides this one since he's been back from injury. I think this is a fluke. I do. I think the Cardinals are going to be in much worse scenarios, and I think Kyler Murray is going to have to be leaned on a lot more than he was on Sunday when they were just like, yeah, let's just not give him the ball back. Let's just keep that ball. So just go
That's
ahead
a
and hand it
fair
off.
analysis because it's 13 for 23, and
Yeah,
that's really low for passers. So either it's 3 and out all game long, or it's, as you said, they are running with the ball carriers like James Conner and Michael Carter, and that's exactly what happened.
yeah,
So, yeah, it's. I mean, I'm not going to start Kyler Murray over my existing starting quarterback because I haven't had to until this point.
right.
But if something were to happen, or if Kyler Murray is for whatever reason on the waiver and you just lost Trevor Lawrence, yeah, that's a good option.
Yeah, no, definitely. I just pulled up his game log since he returned. First game back, 17.3 fantasy points. And a first game back from an ACL tear, not bad. And then 23.6 and then 22.4. So then he has a 13.8. So and he has scored a rushing touchdown in every single game besides this past week. So he's on a bye
Yeah.
week. His first game back is against San Francisco. Kyler Murray and Jalen Hurts are not the same player, but Kyler Murray will have to be helping this offense if they want to be able to stay in that game. And then they get Chicago and Philly in the fantasy championship. So
Yeah.
got some decisions to make there if you're a Kyler Murray owner, and I am, so I'll be making that decision as well. Bijan Robinson, 10.9 fantasy points. You can't say he didn't get the opportunities, but 23 opportunities. It's just Jets have a good defense, and this game was terrible. So I guess that's where we land on that. I mean, do you have more? You have more thoughts? I mean, you roll out Bijan. You had a down game after a handful of good ones here because Arthur Smith had been using him well. He still was using it well, 23 opportunities, but 10.9 points.
If I wish I had a better option, but I don't because you got him in the first or second round. So
Right.
you don't have a better option. It's just frustrating. It's been frustrating all year long. But I mean, I say for real, but it doesn't change anything at this point.
Yeah. You keep rolling him out. Same thing with Travis Kelsey. This may be how it goes, but you got to keep playing him. So there you go. Javonte Williams, 10 fantasy points. I think this is for real, and I'm bummed because we started to feel really good about Javonte. But
Yeah.
this offense seems to do better when it's a full on committee and when Russ has the ball in his hands. So um, I think this is for real for Javonte. Do you agree?
I'm in agreement,
Okay.
unfortunately.
Yeah. I believe this is for real. Uh Duo in the Pittsburgh backfield here. Najee Harris and Jalen Warren, 9.7 fantasy points and 6.5. Man, I was ready for the boom game from both of these guys against Arizona. Kyron Williams comes out 200 all purpose. Najee's coming off a 100-yard game. I was ready for them to just come and lay the hammer down, and that didn't happen.
Yeah.
Um, but again, I think I'm willing to call fluke on both of these, especially on Najee, I think, because with Trubisky, and I'm willing to call this fluke on Jalen Warren because, again, with Trubisky, I think they're going to need to rely on these two guys, whether it be check down screens, whether it just be Najee's carrying the ball, 20 times a game, whatever it may be. I think they're going to have to rely on the two running backs here. I think they're some of their most talented players. So I think this is fluke, but I mean, if you can help not starting either of them, I would consider it.
Don't forget the Cardinals stuffed the Cowboys in like week 3. So
Sure, yeah,
they're a strange, peculiar team. So I'm not surprised
yeah,
that at some point the Steelers, who have looked suspect all year and have a questionable win-loss ratio based on how their offense has, lack thereof performed. So I'm not surprised that this does happen, but I also think it's a fluke. I think they're going to be okay.
yeah, and not to mention, I'll say like this was a weird game. There were two weather delays in this game,
Yeah.
and you mean you can't control it, but like I think they helped the Cardinals because the Cardinals scored, and then immediately it was a weather delay, and the weather delay passes, and they come back out, they play a little bit, and the Cardinals score again, and then it's another weather delay, and it was like I feel like it was like just man, I feel like the Steelers just kept getting kicked down after they had a chance to answer back. Um, if anything, I think this shows us that hey, the Kenny Pickett uh, truthers may have something going for him here because Mitch Trubisky is not much better. It seems as is actually worse as it seems than Kenny Pickett is.
Yeah.
So no
Kenny
prep,
Pickett
but I
is
mean,
a fine quarterback. He's good. As far as fantasy goes, he's not a good fantasy football option,
yeah,
but we got other players to talk about.
yeah. Zach Moss, first game back in the bell cow role. It certainly was that a bell cow role. He had 7 carries, I believe, inside the 10-yard line. The opportunities were fantastic. Didn't equate to much fantasy. 7.7 fantasy points. I'm not worried about this, Wes. Are you? I mean, I think this is a fluke. We've seen him be incredible in a starting role.
If we could, we would put him in our let down segment, but because people have questions about, hey, I thought Zach Moss was
Right.
going to be great because he was great. This is why we're answering it here in our Fluke for Real segment. So this is a fluke, and you start him for your playoffs because he is the running back
Yeah.
for the Indianapolis Colts for the rest of the season.
Yeah, definitely. You keep rolling them out. Calvin Ridley, one of the last ones here, 7.3 fantasy points. Kind of touched on it in the news here, Wes, but if you can play somebody else, do it. If not, I think you're not gonna ruin yourself. I don't know. I don't know. It's a tough call on Ridley.
He had that one great, essentially Hail Mary catch, to
Yeah,
almost overtime that got called back because of a holding penalty. So maybe that does help with CJ Beathard's connection to Ridley. Is like, oh, I aired it out and Ridley came down with it. Great. It didn't count, but hopefully that does add some, uh, a little bit of a spark between them. But just as you said, we've kind of had to find a different option to replace Ridley. So you probably just go back to that option.
yeah, I agree. Yeah, definitely. Pat Fryermuth, 5.9 fantasy points. They lose Trubisky. Weird weather delay game. I'm gonna call this one a fluke. I I think I think there are better days here, even with Trubisky.
Yeah, I agree. It's Fryermuth. He's one of the most reliable players in that Steelers offense.
Yeah, definitely a goose egg here from Terry McLaurin. This is for real. I don't know how you can roll out Commanders skill players. Really,
Nobody.
the hilarious thing was Wes is after that Thursday night game against the Bears. We've talked about it once already since then, but we were like, let's see Sam Howell keep throwing the ball 50 times, and then it was like
Right.
he just kept doing it. He kept above 45 pass attempts. And then on Sunday against Miami, do you know how many pass attempts he had, Wes?
I don't recall.
Do you have a guess? If he had been going over 45, how many pass attempts he may have had against
Here's
Miami in a game where they were
here's
getting
my
blown out?
answer. I would assume that he was going to throw 55 times because the Dolphins
Right,
offense is amazing. So that
right.
that is what I thought.
Yeah, so let me just make sure I get this correct here. In a game where they lost 42-15, Sam Howell threw the ball 23 times.
What in the
What?
world?
I know. I heard some people talking about it on Monday, and it was like, what were they doing? Like, what was the plan? Like, what you and the fact they lost Brian Robinson and he still only threw the ball 23 times. Like,
I'm
it was like,
surprised
what?
we didn't go into this episode announcing Ron Rivera was fired.
Yeah,
I
it's
mean, it
absurd.
was like that's felt like the final straw, but here we
Yeah,
are.
here we are. Last one, and then we'll get into waiver wire and Thursday night football preview, which is sure to be quick. You can assume why. Is Adam Thielen 5.5 fantasy points. Another bad game, and it's suddenly for real.
It suddenly is for real.
Listen, this could be an overreaction. You could say it's been two bad games. What are you guys talking about? It's suddenly for real. You know why? Because there's suddenly a new top target, and it's Jonathan Mingo, the guy we talked about on the waiver wire
Sure did.
where are we at? What are we talking about here? Last Tuesday. I don't know, but this seems for real. Sorry, Thielen owners. I know he was your golden boy, but this is
Yeah.
not going to pay off here. That's it for Fluke for real. Thanks for hanging out with us. There's obviously clearly you can tell a full week. So we're going to do a quick waiver wire segment and then a Thursday night preview. Waiver wire ads. I'm going to start out here. You could mention a lot of guys here. I think if you're looking at your trending page on Sleeper, you'll see names like Ezekiel Elliott, names like Christian Watson, names like that, and maybe Jake Browning, people that you may be more obvious there. I got a clear waiver wire ad for you, and then under the radar one I'm going to go over real quick. My clear waiver ad is Jordan Love. Now he is rostered in 63% of sleeper leagues, which is still too low. Actually, it's obviously it's more than that 50% where we try and stick around for on this waiver wire segment, but 4 straight weeks as a top 10 quarterback, 10 touchdowns and 2 interceptions over his last 4 games, and the remaining schedule is fantastic. I think the Packers might win out, and I think they could. I think they have a chance to win the division. I'm serious. This team looks awesome. So it's crazy stuff here, but they just knocked off the Chiefs. They scored the most points that Kansas City has given up against an offense all season. They look great, and the receivers are awesome. He's awesome. They're doing really well, and all that with like no run game. So good stuff there for Jordan Love. And now my under the radar ad, and I'm not going to go too far here because it's also a Green Bay Packer. And my under the radar ad here is Dontavion Wicks. He is 3% owned but he is the presumed fill-in wide receiver here if Christian Watson is going to miss any time. Now, the first 4 weeks when Christian Watson was injured and not playing fully, Dontavian Wicks averaged 60% of snaps for that time frame. He's been pretty good in his limited touches. The thing with Wicks is that he's a boomer bust guy. He can make a big play, but he's not going to get peppered with targets here. But he has been pretty good in limited opportunities. This is a big dart throw, similarly to last week with Jonathan Mingo. But Dontavian Wicks is my under the radar ad again because he has a great schedule going forward. And this may be more for the Christian Watson owners than anything else. But somebody you should keep an eye on here because he is definitely a name worth mentioning. Those are my waiver ads of the week. Wes, why don't you jump into yours? Unless you have any comments. But I mean...
No, I think Wick is an interesting one to mention. I'd like the caveat or the condition rather of this is for Christian Watson owners just to have maybe that decent replacement because obviously you can't just go pick up Romeo Dobbs. But yeah, we'll see what happens there. But Jordan Love is playing fantastic. And they did, mention they have a shot to win the division. They did split with Detroit. So if anything did happen with Detroit falling off a cliff, who knows? But Jordan Love is playing great. Playing very great. And as we mentioned earlier in our Fluka for Real segment, you can expect 20 plus points from Jordan Love every week. And it's pretty nice. So my waiver wire ads, plural, one of my, I don't think, as you said, I don't think there's really an obvious ad. But I will say, I don't think you need to get Ezekiel Elliott. I don't think he is the person you need to go get unless maybe you're a Ramondre Stevenson owner. But 10 points on a game that, I mean, you probably saw the game watching at home, right? It was 0-6. I mean, they're a bad team. The Patriots are a bad football team. There's no other way to put it. They are bad. There's one other way to put it. I probably can't say it through the microphone here because we want to keep it as PG as we can. But one of the Patriots players, after they lost to the Giants, he went up to Saquon Barkley. Did you hear this? And he was like, "You're lucky we're butt. You're lucky we suck." And then you see a picture of Saquon laughing, and then he had to go, and then that Patriots player had to go apologize for I'm sorry, we shouldn't be distracted by comments off the field. The Patriots are terrible. I don't think Ezekiel Elliott is the waiver wire ad of the week just because Ramondre Stevenson's down. My favorite waiver wire ad this week is going to be Taysom Hill. You got Derek Carr just barely breathing. He's just doing everything he can to bandage up and put lead in his body so that he can just be some kind of Terminator and play for the Saints for whatever reason. Taysom Hill has been used so much already again. And if you have Jameis Winston as the official starter, you can expect Taysom Hill in your tight end slot to be throwing and running and receiving a lot. And that's fantastic. My under the radar, someone I was so excited about going into the season, did not pan out a lot, but is looking very interesting after 12 targets on Sunday. Elijah Moore, Cleveland Browns wide receiver. Amari Cooper's in concussion protocol, but even outside of that, guess what I was reminded of watching that game? Joe Flacco, Amari, and Elijah Moore have already played together. They played together last year for the New York Jets. Yeah. And he was targeting him a whole bunch, especially in the second half of that game. So keep your eye on Elijah Moore because 12 targets is a lot. And no one's going to talk about him because the official stat line is 4 catches, 83 yards. Okay, whoop-de-doo. I'm not going to go get that guy unless you look a little deeper and you see, oh, yeah, they do know each other. They know each other very well. So those are my waiver wire ads for week 14.
Hopefully, these will help carry you through, fill some slots for you, fill in a bye week or two, maybe. Hopefully, these are worthwhile for you. We're going to do a Thursday night football preview. I don't want to.
Sorry.
But I guess we'll do this because it's Bailey Zappi versus Mitch Trubisky on prime time, baby. What do we got here?
Baby!
Listen, we're probably jinxing it again. It's probably going to be an incredible game like we did with the Bears Commanders. But this game's going to be so bad, dude. It's going to be so bad.
It's not going to be good. This cannot be jinxed. The only thing, it could be entertaining. watching two, mediocre teams at best play, and it could just be a hilarious outing. But
Yeah. We'll see
look,
here. I mean, I've got limited words, Wes. I mean, but you hit me with your must start, and let's talk about it real quick.
you know what I'm gonna do instead? I'm gonna do it all right now because I have few words to mention about this
Okay.
game. Okay, my must
Okay.
start. Nobody, and I'm not just trying to be funny here, but like legitimately, outside of Najee Harris, you don't need to start anybody from the Steelers or Patriots in this game. You don't need to start anyone on the Steelers or Patriots to win the last week of the regular season in fantasy for 2023. These are
Yeah.
not the teams you have to start anybody on. My risky start, everyone. I think everyone is a risk. Now, maybe Deontay Johnson, maybe because they already played together, Trubisky and Deontay Johnson last year. But again, Johnson didn't have a touchdown last year with Trubisky. So I don't know. It's a risk. I don't like it. 14 points from week 13. That's fine. That's fine, but I'm not excited about it. And I think it's a bad risk to start Ezekiel Elliott. I don't think it's a good idea. As I mentioned in our waiver wire segment, I don't think you should be going out to get Ezekiel Elliott. And that leaves me, simply put, don't start everybody else. Everybody else. So you don't need to start anybody. These are not the players or the teams to start your final week to go get in the playoffs or get that bye week seed. No. That's my take on this. This is going to be such a bad game. This is going to be so bad. And I can't wait. I can't wait to
Yeah.
Friday's going to be our shortest episode ever.
Right.
Stay tuned
Yeah.
for a 13-minute show. That's it.
Listen, I have legitimately written down here. Must start. I wish I could say nobody. But for the people who are in a desperate mode here, I want to provide some context as to, and I'm saying must start this guy, and I'm not even starting this guy over Rashi Rice, over Zay Flowers. But if you have to start somebody in this game, it's going to be Deontay Johnson. And here's why I'll say that. He's had 8 targets or a touchdown, 8 or more targets or a touchdown in 5 of his last 6 games. So he's there. He's there. He's being involved. He's being productive at times. And I looked back to last year when Trubisky and Deontay played together, and he averaged over 10 targets a game in the 5 full games that they played together. So, hey, we could see a vintage Deontay game where it feels like it's just Ben hyper targeting him. If you have to start somebody in this game, it's Deontay. The risk here is Ezekiel Elliott. 23 opportunities with Roger Stevenson out. Nobody else was involved. Could be a good play, but we haven't seen Zeke be a bell cow in like over a year and a half. So I don't really trust it. And so I'm not really excited about that play either. And don't start Hunter Henry. I don't know. Or everybody else. So I wrote down Hunter Henry because you could be going, Trey McBride's had a great game against Pittsburgh. Hunter Henry is not Trey McBride. Don't get cute. That's what I gotta say there. Don't risk it there in the last regular season game of the fantasy season. I yeah. If I was
Tough.
betting the over under on a 13-minute episode for Thursday, it'd be the under. I would say we're gonna get
Oh,
a
you imagine?
single digit minutes. It's gonna that's how
We
bad this
try.
game
That'd
is
be
gonna
so
be.
funny.
Listen, that's going to do it for this episode. Thanks for hanging out with us. It was a big week, and we hope this helps you out leading into the final week of the regular season of the fantasy playoffs. Let us know who your top waiver ads are going to be, and what's your score prediction for Thursday Night Football? Steelers Patriots. Wes, do you have a score prediction?
Oh, I don't think I don't have an exact number, but I don't think either team will get more than 1 touchdown.
Yeah, I'm gonna say like 16-10, and
Gosh,
that's
that's
probably
horrible. What a
generous.
boring game.
That's
Yeah.
it's a touchdown each and 4 other field goals. Roll out Chris Boswell,
Ew.
baby. That's the stud. That should have
Yeah,
been the
must
must start.
start.
That should have been the must start. Is Chris Boswell this week? Listen, let us know in the comments all of that stuff. Let us know what you think about Thursday Night Football. While you're down there, follow us on all our socials. Subscribe, ring that bell, and we will see you on Friday for Thursday Night Football recap and our final regular season fantasy preview for week 14. It's going to be a fun time. We will see you then. My name is Noah Selby.
And I'm Wes Selby.
And this has been Fourth and Troll Fantasy. Fourth and Troll Fantasy is a production of FQ Media and Selby Artistic Workshop.